Thank you, Mr. Vice President. There was a very important question about the role of the Human Rights Council in addressing the planetary crisis, and I think it's critical for the Council to integrate systematically the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment into the Universal Periodic Review process. I would also really encourage the Council to continue its holistic approach, recognizing that the planetary crisis is a human rights crisis and not listening to those voices that would separate those issues. I think it would be wise to have a special session on the planetary crisis that brings in experts from the World Health Organization, the World Meteorological Organization, etc. And the last thing I'll say in terms of the Human Rights Council is to ensure that there are adequate resources for the special procedures to do their jobs. The second question, which is really not a question but an issue that came up repeatedly, is war and conflict. And let me say this in the most clear terms possible. War is fundamentally incompatible with the enjoyment of the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. So I endorse the Secretary General and the High Commissioner's call for an immediate ceasefire in the Ukraine, in the occupied Palestinian territory and in other conflict zones. There was a question asked about the impacts of Resolution 4813 and 76300, recognizing the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. And it's really, I think, a testament to the Council's visionary recognition of this right. This right is being mainstreamed in multilateral environmental governance. It was included in the outcome statements of COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh, COP28 in Dubai. It was at the heart of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It was included in the Bonn Declaration on a future free from chemicals and waste. Just last week at the United Nations Environment Assembly, it was included in 5 resolutions. The resolution of the Human Rights Council was a catalyst for the Committee on the Rights of the Child's General Comment 26, where that committee for the first time recognized that every child has the right to live in a healthy environment. It's also been taken up by the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. This is all really good news. There's a process taking place in ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, to develop a regional agreement on the right to a healthy environment. There's ongoing process in the implementation of the Escazú Treaty in Latin America and the Caribbean. And as I mentioned earlier, there are negotiations about to take place at the Council of Europe on an additional protocol to the European Convention on Human Rights, critically important. The resolutions on the right to a healthy environment have also been a catalyst for action at the national level. So countries including Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Canada, Grenada, and St. Lucia have for the first time recognized the right to a healthy environment in law, bringing the total number of countries to 161. Those resolutions have also catalyzed action at the subnational level. So soon after the Human Rights Council resolution, the state of New York in the US added the right to a healthy environment to its state constitution. In New South Wales, in Australia, they enacted a new climate change law last year which says that all climate action should be consistent with the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. In the Australian Capital Territory, there's a bill before the Parliament that will add the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment to the human rights legislation of that region. There's also been a number of court decisions that have specifically referred to those 2 resolutions. In Costa Rica, cases dealing with pesticides and endangered species. In Ecuador, cases dealing with flaring and deforestation. A coal mining decision from Thailand. And so that's encouraging. And the most surprising thing, perhaps, is that there have been a number of court decisions in cases where businesses have sued governments for taking stronger climate and environmental actions, and governments have used their obligations with respect to the right to a healthy environment successfully as a defense in those cases. A case defending the Argentina glacier law, a case defending regulations in Peru that restricted imports of polluting older vehicles, and cases in Kenya, Uganda, and Mexico dealing with new plastic pollution regulations. So that's a very encouraging sign. I only have 4 minutes left. This is my final interactive dialogue. I want to thank the Human Rights Council for the extraordinary honor of serving in this capacity. I'd also like to really acknowledge the tremendous support of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and my predecessor, John Knox. And in particular, I want to speak to the tremendous support of my team, Dorta Simonson here, Victoria Aberg, Frederic Bourque, and previously Su Young Wang, who have been incredible supportive. I'd like to thank the core group of Costa Rica, the Maldives, Morocco, Slovenia, and Switzerland for your leadership. I'd also like to thank Fiji, Finland, Germany, Luxembourg, the Marshall Islands, and Monaco for your financial and moral support. And I'd like to recognize the incredible work that's being done by civil society organizations. Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, during my 6 years as Special Rapporteur, I've had the privilege of meeting literally thousands of extraordinary people working to protect human rights and the environment. And I will never forget some of their stories. In Fiji, I met a young girl who told me that she used to love going to the beach, but now she doesn't because she's scared of the ocean. She said it seems like it's angry. That still gets me. In Norway, I met with Sami indigenous people whose reindeer, the living heart of their culture and their economy, are starving to death because of climate change. In Portugal, I met with people traumatized by raging wildfires exacerbated by the climate crisis. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I met farmers who told me that it's becoming unbearable to work their crops in the heat and the humidity. In Slovenia, I met a grandmother who told me the names of all the relatives she had lost to cancer caused by industrial pollution in the sacrifice zone where she lived. In Botswana, I met indigenous people and rural residents struggling terribly with water scarcity, food insecurity, worsening heat, and last but not least, in Chile, I met a mother with tears running down her face, describing her fears every day about sending her children to school because that school has experienced recurring episodes of mass poisoning by industrial pollution. I met a fisherman in Chile who was angry, so angry because his livelihood had been destroyed by industrial water pollution. And I met a teenage girl who's asked me, how can I have good menstrual health when I don't have water in my home or at my school? And finally, I met a mother from the United Kingdom whose daughter, 9-year-old daughter, a beautiful, vibrant child, was killed by air pollution. That was the conclusion of a coroner's inquest. It broke her mother's heart, and her mother, who is still haunted to this day by the loss of Ella, quit her job as a school teacher and became a full-time advocate for the right to breathe clean air. So when we hear these abstract statistics about 8 million premature deaths every year caused by pollution, it's a number that our minds actually can't comprehend. When we talk about 1.5 degrees Celsius of temperature increase, it's really hard to understand that in a human way. So I want us to all focus on those vulnerable and marginalized people whose rights are being violated and abused, whose lives are being made more difficult. And it's on behalf of these remarkable yet vulnerable people that I urge all states to accelerate the human rights-based actions required to transform the inspiring words of the Human Rights Council's resolution into reality so that every member of present and future generations can fully enjoy their right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Literally, hundreds of millions of lives depend on it. Humanity's future depends on it. I thank you.